Tonight, more and more girls are being pushed out of school simply for being girls. A monthly cycle of 4 to 7 days, which was only to be a biological process, is now a critical hurdle proving difficult to scale, at least for the many schoolgirls who are having to pay so much just to menstruate in dignity. Now, 1 out of every 10 schoolgirls in sub-Saharan Africa misses school during menstruation. In Ghana, the situation is even worse. The average pack of 12 sanitary pads is sold at 20 Ghana cedis. And for a full menstrual cycle, some women need 2, which is 40 Ghana cedis, and that is more than 3 times the minimum wage in Ghana, which now stands at 14 cedis, 88 pesos. UNICEF says 95% of girls living in rural communities miss 20% of school because they simply cannot afford sanitary pads. Now, in the face of all these, the government of Ghana considers menstrual products as a luxury and puts a 20% tax on all sanitary products, to which girls in Ghana have to pay 20% more than they just need to menstruate. Efforts to get the government to drop these levies are yet to produce any results. And why should the cost of something so crucial and fundamental as sanitary pads be in competition for the unaffordable tag? It's wicked, insensitive. And Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, calls it unconscionable. Tonight, we zero in on what many have called a state-sponsored profiteering scheme against women and girls. How long will this continue? And what can be done to deal with it? These are the issues on the burner tonight on Spotlight here on MX24 television. We'll dig in after the break. And you're welcome back to Spotlight on MX24 television. My name is Adwoa Tenkoramaa. And tonight my guest is Edith Fordjoe. She is the founder of Thriving Women Foundation, which is spearheading a free sanitary pad initiative called Pay for a Period. Good evening, Edith. Thank you so much for your time in Spotlight.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
What started the whole idea of Pay for a Period?
Okay, so I am one of 3 co-founders of the Thriving Women Foundation, and it was born out of a shared idea of helping girls to overcome some of the barriers that they face as they grow. And one of the immediate projects that we could come up with was helping achieve menstrual equity. So we decided to bring more attention to the phenomenon of period poverty, advocate for these girls, and also lead fundraising efforts to ensure that they have unlimited supply all through the year for proper menstrual hygiene management.
When we talk about period poverty in Ghana, how bad do you think the situation is? I mean, we spoke about some statistics in the beginning, but really, when you go on the ground to speak with the women, you see and interact with them, what is the situation like?
Okay, so the stats speak for themselves, but on the ground, it's a stark reality of many young girls. And it's not only about the women and girls in the rural communities. Even people living in cities in Accra are experiencing period poverty. And it's such a pervasive issue because it not only affects their health and mental well-being, it has cascading effects into their risk of exposure to sexual violence, sexual abuse, and also it affects the achievement of gender equality. So it's a very critical issue that has to be addressed from all fronts.
I'm glad you're speaking about the issue of sexual exploitation, because last 2 years, the Star Ghana Foundation launched a research and found out where in some areas where girls were exchanging Indomie or for money. So they go and say they need money, and then the boys will give them Indomie, and then they can use some of the money to buy the sanitary pad. Some of them as well also sleep with men who are old enough to be their fathers or maybe young enough to be their brothers, just so they can get money to buy sanitary pads. Is it a challenge of lack of parental control in the home? so that you say, if you're a parent, you're supposed to be able to cater for your girl child enough for them to get sanitary pads? Or it's just the economic circumstances that are prevailing in the country that's causing all of these issues?
I think the two can be true. To some extent, there's a lack of parental guidance, and this is not fallen from an aloofness. It's also from a place of despair, because these women or parents themselves are economically challenged. They also do not have all the resources they need to meet their daily needs. And for the most part, people consider menstruation as something not important. So they don't make adequate preparation for it in their, let's say, daily budget. So to some extent, there's a lack of parental involvement in the well-being of their child. But to a very large extent, too, it's just exploitative on the part of some men and women who take advantage of these girls, because in nowhere and in no world should a sanitary pad elicit sex or a sexual favor. And for something that is very necessary for your wealth, your well-being and your health, it's just plain wickedness to solicit sex for it. So to some extent, it's a lack of parental control and provision, but that can also be explained, not justified, as a result of poor economic
And those who are
circumstances.
exploiting could also have not a defendable explanation, but you can't keep giving without taking. So they can give, and at a point they'll feel the need to take something. So where should a solution begin from if we want to tackle period poverty?
All right, so let's just be clear that some of these stories are clear cases of sexual harassment and defilement, because we are talking about underage girls. So as a grown-up man, you have the responsibility to protect those who are below 18. And if you feel like your kindness cannot be exhibited without any strings attached, we are begging you not to be kind to these girls if you think you have to give them money and get sex from them. But let's talk about the solution.
For the girls, it's easier to say these things. But then, so what do? And I hear stories of people using rags, using other materials just to menstruate, because maybe they cannot go to men for sex. Maybe they cannot do any other thing for sex. So they have to find other means. And those means end up being very unhygienic for them.
Yes. So for the solution, I think one of the first ways, and which a lot of NGOs like ourselves are doing, is to raise awareness about the phenomenon. So letting them know the various ways in which period poverty manifests. And I just want to mention that it's not only about the unavailability of these menstrual hygiene products, but also even access to a clean washroom to manage yourself when you're on your period, and also access to the right information on what your symptoms are, how to cope better when you're experiencing those symptoms, and what kind of menstrual health disorders exist, so you're able to pay attention to it. So I think awareness creation is one way to go. Also, it would be very helpful if governments could make more ambitious help or more ambitious commitments to solving this issue, because like I've said on many platforms, NGOs cannot resolve this on their own. Private citizens cannot resolve this on their own. This is a national problem. It has very telling effects on economic growth, progress, and many other areas. And it's very important that the government steps in, either by scrapping the tax, which we've been asking for, or empowering local manufacturers to make it more affordable and more accessible.
But do you see period poverty as a national problem, or do you think that those in the positions of power see this as a national problem, as you say?
I think it's a national problem.
But do they see it as such?
Whether they see it, I cannot speak on that. But from all indication, based on their posture and their responses to calls for more involvement towards solving the problem, I would say they've taken a more lax approach. They probably do not see it as a pressing issue. And that's because they are not viewing it in the long term. They're only thinking about it as some girls menstruating and they don't have pads. They're not thinking about it in terms of absenteeism rates. They're not thinking about it in terms of how it affects their confidence and their health. They're not thinking about it in terms of the risk to violence, like I mentioned, or sexual harassment. They're not thinking about it in terms of equal access to opportunities. because these are girls who have to stay away from the classroom because they know when they come, they probably have just one pad.
Right.
So when they come, they have to change. You know, you have to change every 6 hours. They have just one. They can't change every 6 hours. When they come to the school, they don't have a washroom that is private enough, is clean enough, and conducive enough for them to manage themselves. So they'll stay away from school. They're not thinking about it, in fact, in those terms. And that's probably why it's yet to become a national issue for them.
So I'm glad you have mentioned the fact that girls need to change at least every 6 hours. So if you're changing 6 hours in the 24 hours, that's 4 sanitary pads for a day.
Yeah.
The entire pack is 12.
12.
At least for
Some
the
are
one.
10.
Some are 10, some are 12. So for the one I know, it's 12. So let's use 12.
Okay.
If you have to change every 4 times every day, that's a full pack gone in 3 days.
Yes.
Some people menstruate
5 days.
5 days.
Some 7.
Some 7. So you're looking at 2 sanitary pads, which approximately cost 40 Ghana cedis in every menstrual cycle. There are people we spoke to, some Kayayes, who say that when it used to be 7 Ghana cedis, they were even struggling to buy it. And now the price is just going up. So they'll use racks. What are the dangers in that?
Okay, so the dangers with using rags or cloth for managing your period is with how sanitary it is. So how you're washing it, the kind of soap you're using, whether it's exposed to sunlight, and whether even the fabric you're using has chemicals that could be harmful to your reproductive health. And that's why I know the FDA is yet to approve any reusable menstrual pads. But for the most part, we like to present all options to the girls. So, you know, we have tampons, pads, reusable towels. Some have menstrual cups.
All right.
And we like to let them know that they have these options available. And with choosing, it's a matter of preference and comfort. So personally, I prefer pads. Some may argue the sustainability aspect of it, but your comfort while you're managing your period trumps any other issues such as that. And for these girls, because it's very, very difficult for them to even eat in some cases, they'll pick food over managing their period because they know they can find tissue, they will find cloth. But it's not fair for them to be in such positions where they have to consider food and the pad. And that's why we've been saying, empower local manufacturers to make pads more affordable, more accessible. If the FDA can help in providing a standard for reusable menstrual pads, then that would also make it more affordable because at least when you use, I know some of them can last as long as 6 months or a year. So if you have 2 or 3 that you buy and you're washing it, and there are standards on how to manage it, it would help.
So you buy 1 reusable or 2 or 3 reusable pads, and how long can you use it for the period, for the 7 days period that you have? Do you use one every day and wash and use the other one, or you
depending on your flow and the thickness of the cloth. So it depends. I can't really speak to the thickness, but let's say you'd have to use 2 in a day. That's why you should have maybe 4 or 5, so that when you wash one, before it dries, you can have another one to use.
So that's a more viable option that the stakeholders can begin to.
That is also a very tricky area because we are talking about people who live in communities that don't have access to reliable water supply. And they have to trek distances to go and get water. So if we are presenting reusable pads as the best option for them, where they have to trek miles to go and get water, and you know when you're managing your period, you need a lot of water so you feel fresh and smell good. And we are presenting this as an option. They already have that challenge of access to reliable water. So are we adding on to the problem and telling them to use, because I'm sure you have to use about 1 bucket to wash a well.
Exactly.
To get it in good state to use again. So it's a very tricky situation. It's a very tricky situation, and it calls for a very concerted effort to resolve it.
So I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago, some NGOs marched to Parliament. I don't know if your NGO was part.
No, we weren't.
Yes, but they were demanding that they take the 20% taxes off the sanitary products. First of all, what is your reaction to the fact that for so long, the GRA considers, or the government in its entirety considers, sanitary products as a luxury, and so they have to put tax on it.
So what I would say in response to that is that the benefits of giving girls access to safe and hygienic, dignified periods far outweighs whatever money can be raised from tax and sanitary products. And it shows a lack of concern for women's rights and girl-child rights when money is placed over their dignity. And like I mentioned, because they are not seeing it as an issue beyond bleeding, they're not seeing the economic benefits, the access to opportunities and education, and how that can affect the long-term growth of the girl child. That's probably why they still consider the taxes more than providing a more sustainable solution, because we can raise all the funds we want, we can make all the reusable parts we want, but if the government does not step in and make a more decisive move to make periods more affordable, we would be toiling for a very long time.
Is there a middle ground in this conversation such that if government comes to say, okay, we are scrapping 10% off and we keep 10% because we also need to mobilize revenue, is that something NGOs are willing to go for?
It's something we are willing to accept in the time frame, but would also definitely be pushing towards making it totally free. It should be as affordable as condoms, or less. Sex is a choice, a very conscious choice, unless in cases of harassment and rape. It's a conscious decision you make to have sex. But we don't decide that we are going to bleed. It will happen. And for such a biological function that we have very little control over, it should not be subjected to such arbitrary taxes.
So some women, I think earlier this morning, I saw a post, and I think I just want to read excerpts of it. It was talking about the pain women go through during their menstrual cycles, and why we have to add the cost of sanitary pads to it. So it says taxed periods, that's the heading, and then cramps come, fatigue, headaches, acne, joint pain, back pain, lower back pain. And so all of that is included in the 20% tax that government is taking from sanitary products. But this is just by the side. But really, you have rightly said that menstruation is a natural phenomenon that women are not supposed to suffer so much in getting the needed dignity when they are bleeding. But we have talked about government side, Parliament. What is the role of Parliament in ensuring that we get these taxes up? Because the Speaker of Parliament has expressed very strong interest in getting the taxes repealed, but we do not know why, as of now, no action is being taken.
So Parliament is supposed to make the laws, right? And for this, I believe the onus firmly lies on our women MPs. We have 40 strong women in
All of them are trying. I think that demonstration, one of them was...
I know they're working hard, but there's always, until a problem is resolved, there's always room for improvement. There's always room to do more, find more innovative ways. So if the standard process that they are taking is not yielding results, it lies on them as people who represent us and who are close to power, or close to the highest forms of power in the country, to make a say for us, to take a stand for us.
But what more do you want them to do? Because I think for stand, most of them have taken, and they support some of these demonstrations, especially when they come to the presence of Parliament. They do add their voices to it. So what more should women MPs do?
Sustain the efforts. You keep pushing until you find results. So if it takes mentioning it every day at the Parliament proceedings and bringing it at the forefront of conversations every time, you know, when you keep sowing the seed and you keep applying force, at some point, things will crack. So they have to keep pushing, because they are best bets in getting this thing passed. They have live our experiences. They are better placed to speak on these issues. And these are very educated people and very well exposed people. So they know the effects of period poverty on women's rights. So I believe there's still more to be done. I appreciate their efforts in speaking about the issues, supporting NGOs and supporting the march, but there's still more room for improvement.
Let's talk about the financial cost of periods. I mean, for households, not even just for the girls or for the women, because if you're a father, if you're a mother, you have to take certain amount of money for your girl child in every month. And that amount may not be so significant, but if you're earning, let's say, 1,000 Ghana cedis, you have rent to pay, you have water bills to pay, you have food to eat, and in that 1,000, you're still taking 40 cedis every other month. Every month, not even every other month, every month to give to your girl child. What is the financial burden this puts on families?
So let me use I'm a family of all girls. We are 3 girls. So there was a point in time when my mom was buying sanitary pads for 3 solid girls every month. And if you're not lucky enough to be economically empowered or have access to such resources, it can be such a drain. Because for 3 girls, including herself at some point, so 4 women and 40 CD per one, so 4 16, 160 a month, and you're earning 1,000 CDs. It's very draining. And that's what I said earlier, that we shouldn't put people in a position where they have to consider food and other utilities and amenities over a safe and dignified period. Because if you don't buy the period, you're going to use T-roll. Exactly. It may soak the blood, all right, but you'll be uncomfortable all throughout the day. You may end up staining yourself. Here's a case, you don't have a washroom to go and change. So are you going to walk around with stained clothes? So it's a very difficult position to be in. And ideally, we are all working towards a future where we don't have to consider food and other amenities against our periods.
I'm actually glad you mentioned T-roll, because I know people who, even if they are economically empowered, they are financially stable, sometimes you buy sanitary pads and you run out. Sometimes you bleed more, sometimes you bleed less. So in the moment where you have run out, some people resort to using T-rolls. Is there anything wrong with that?
So that's a very health-related question. So I don't have all the facts to speak to that. But I feel like using T-roll in the interim, maybe before you get home or you get your period unexpectedly, you're in a place where you don't have any other woman to go and ask for a sanitary pad, is your best option. So sometimes...
Have you used one before?
A few times.
Okay.
Where I'm maybe surrounded with men and I'm too far away from a shop to go and get one. Or even if I got one, there was no way I could properly manage myself. So,
why did you decide to pay for a period? Why? There are a lot of other issues, social issues that you could tackle, but why periods?
Okay, so I believe in the potential of every woman, and I have in different roles and different experiences worked towards providing women with access to economic growth, education, healthcare. And I believe that period poverty or achieving menstrual equity is one of the lowest hanging fruits of achieving women empowerment, because it's one of the things that once taking, there are a lot of challenges and women issues that women will face in their path to life. When you take period poverty away, it makes things a little easier, because imagine that she goes to school every time she's on her period. She's comfortable. She has a good washroom to change. She has the same access to education as the boy child. She's just as empowered as him. Now she can deal with other challenges, maybe in the workplace or handling societal issues. It's one less problem for the girl child or the woman to worry about. And I believe it's the lowest hanging fruit. So it's a good place to start.
You keep mentioning women equity, women empowerment. What has period poverty got to do with any of these?
Everything. Everything. So menstruation is a part of the woman, right? A healthy woman. There are some people who will not menstruate, and that's a different health condition. And because it's a very critical part of her, it equally means it's a woman's health issue. A woman's health issue, like any health issue, is a basic human rights issue. Now, what has it got to do with women empowerment? Imagine that every day, both of us are in school. 20% of the school term, we are out of the classroom. And we don't have good economic conditions at home either way. So we are not even having the peace of mind to rest and read to catch up. We are probably on the farm somewhere, or we are in too much pain to do anything. We are away from the classroom, and the boys have 100% access to this. You're already putting the boys a step ahead of the girls.
But it's not the boys' fault either.
It's not their fault. Nobody's saying it's their fault. But because it's not the girls' fault either, those who can must make sure that the boys and the girls are at par.
Right.
It's equal opportunity. Outcome is based on so many other different elements. But equal opportunity, the outcomes, the boy may end up still being more successful, and that would be due to a myriad of reasons. But period poverty should not be the reason the girl fell behind. You understand? So period poverty is a very critical challenge to address if we have to achieve women empowerment, just because of the access and even feeling more dignified. So imagine that from class 4, if I start into class 4, all through GHS, I never have access to sanitary pads. So I'm always very conscious about myself. Am I smelling? Have I stained myself? It affects your confidence. And you realize that in a lot of places, the boys are very vocal, they're very boisterous, they are daring. And the girls are always timid, they're always hiding in the corner, they're always checking their back, have I stained? It affects your psyche, it affects how you present yourself, it affects your confidence levels. And these things play a significant role in how well you do in life. So in the boardroom, you see boys talking more boldly, and the girls are timid. Someone would think she's just a timid girl, but if you trace back, you realize that it started in class 4 when she was afraid to raise her hand in class because she was afraid she had stained herself. So it's a very critical point or a critical hurdle to cross if we have to achieve women's empowerment.
Let's talk about the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection. That's a key stakeholder in all of this. But how do you find the posture and the commitment of that ministry, even to go to rural communities, offer some of these educations that you're talking about? When you go on the ground, do you see a visible presence of the ministry over there?
Yes, in some of the rural areas we've been to, they have a girls' club. And this is a direct result from the Gender Ministry and Education Ministry's efforts or initiative. I believe that they are on the ground, they are doing the work, but they are under-resourced. And there are a lot of girls, and there are a lot of poor people in Ghana that have these challenges. So it's not something they can do on their own. They need
That's why NGOs are supporting.
Yes, so we are all working together. It's not a competition, it's a shared goal. We have to work collaboratively. So the ministry has a guide on menstrual hygiene education that we use sometimes for engaging these girls, teaching them about how to manage their periods and all of that. So I believe they're doing some good work. But like I said, until a problem is solved, there's still room for improvements.
We keep seeing efforts of NGOs on the ground. And I mean, in Ghana, I think the efforts should be commended. You see a lot of women who are standing up, people who are even working on reusable sanitary pads and all. If I was the government, and I'm seeing all of these efforts on the ground, I'm seeing mobilization, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing that. Why do you think I'll feel the urgency to step up to scrap off these taxes? Because even without it, people are working. People are getting these girls sanitary pads.
I mean, any government that thinks like that has to be seriously questioned and reconsidered, because it's your primary responsibility to take care of the welfare of your citizens.
You have a lot of other burdens.
I understand. I know it's prime economics. The needs outweigh the resources, and that's why NGOs step in. But NGOs cannot be left to carry the burden. And it may seem like we are doing a lot. Just last month, I was at a symposium that had over 60 women NGOs who were talking about the work they've done. And these, I'm sure not all the people who were invited showed up. So let's think about it in the hundreds or 200s. And we've not even scratched the surface. For us, for example, we have so far reached over 900 girls, but we've only been able to provide them with 2 months' worth of supply. These are people who bleed every month. So you hear 900 girls and you think it's a big number.
Yeah.
But it's just 2 months of supply we were able to give them. A lot of them have been able to give them just 1 month's worth of supply. Some of them are working on the education bit because they've not got the funding to provide them with the menstrual hygiene products. So there's still a lot of work to be done, and I don't think the government has the luxury to relax just because there are lots of NGOs working on the issue.
It is. I want us to take this video. We went to the street to speak to some head porters, female head porters, who were talking to us about the challenges they face every month when they menstruate. This was a while ago, though, but let's take a look at this.
So first, now, never borrow from the dear. Let me use a pad. By Sisi and never no cost to me. Jai pad use 2 months near 3 months. Sisi and to mango na me use and may see I had that. Adiachi and Miss Adia, Sisi, I am to me top pad.
Pad, they no board the first and a year as a nay 7 cities. But you see, they cost 17 cities more. Me soon to my cinema hatta. I want myself used to be. Because when you scat and got up, because you're 17 cities now, because what I just say, oh, wait, I was a mean be, Edith. And to meet me in James, I made a need out top pad until I was so used to my go. No used to be a quarter a journey, no to be jolly. The way I chinan or Povesanya be at a jolly at the markets.
Very difficult. Seriously, it's very difficult because the money crumple. Like you are in your messes for now, then you were having 10 cedi. Instead, you were expecting it to divide the money and buy food, go and buy pure water, use half of the money and buy pad. And now because of it's expensive. It's 10 cedi. So if you just get the 10 cedi, you have to buy only the pad. You cannot buy the other side things again. So it's very difficult.
You are telling us today work has been very difficult.
Yes.
If you should have your menses right now, how are you going to manage?
Unless I will go to the shower and bath and then I will use pad. Then before I will go there, if I have the money there, I will just go and bath. But if I don't have the money, I have to look for different place to do what, or you borrow the part from someone, then you use it. Later on, when you get the money, then you go and buy, then replace it to the one that you borrow.
Has it ever come to mind that you want to stop using the pad and use like a rag or napkin or something?
Yes, it has ever come to my mind that, but at times if you use the rag, how are you going to, you will not feel comfortable. So that's what we normally say, no. We normally pray to God that so that when you come out, you get something and you get money. Then you use half of the money and buy a pad.
No, I have a thing to do now. It's all got to buy now. Only been did.
But he said, only what is over to be more. Said to Mango.
It's a skin. You might say, I'm not getting over cry. Me ban opinion. I'm Fakaya.
They me use it to my girl. So say the market in Santina me use it or no. It do with me and 10 cities and 15 cities.
It is. The problem is, it's there. People are aware of the problem. First of all, when you watch these videos or when you hear some of these stories, how do they make you feel?
It's very disheartening, and it's just sad that you have to consider food. What will I eat? Should I be comfortable and be hungry, or should I be hungry and deal with the discomfort? It's very sad that, for especially the Kayaye girls, they have a whole set of different challenges they face compared to the girl who lives with her parents who are poor. So it's very disheartening. One of the girls mentioned that you have to even pay to go and use a bathroom.
Yeah.
And these bathrooms, I can assure you, are not in the best conditions. So even seeing something that's not appealing, visually appealing, dealing with cramps, the nausea, the pain, and then also considering what you eat at the end of the day, it's a very tough situation to be in.
You're still watching Spotlight on MX24 television. We'll go for a quick break. When we come back, I'll introduce you to another young woman who is leading what is described as Africa's first social intelligence research lab, of which Kayes are a key focus. We'll be back after this break. Please stay. So welcome back to Spotlight. Thank you so much for giving us your time and staying with us. Before the break, I was talking to you about a young woman. Her name is Samiha Yunus, and she's a founder of Ilmiha Labs. It is Africa's first social intelligence research lab, which essentially focuses on evidence-based programming. And they do this to affect policy direction. One of their key focus is on Kaya women. And before the break, we played to you a clip about some Kaya girls who struggle during the menstrual period. So, Miha, welcome to the show. When you go to the grounds, do you find some of these challenges that the video we just watched raised?
Yes, so I've been working with the Kaya girls for the past 6 years, and closely. That was before I founded Ilmiha, on different projects, different organizations actually. So because I'm a Dogomba, I'm a Northerner, I understand the Dagbani, I speak the Dagbani very well. Okay. And my master's research work was on Kaya actually. So I was looking into the implication of COVID on their well-being. What did COVID do to them? And to talk about period poverty, it's just life. I mean, it's very clear because for me, like I spend more time with them because of the Ilmiha research that. So we are running a Kaya Insights, and basically what we are doing is to collect data points for about 100,000 data points to inform policy and programming. And maybe you would ask me why we are doing this research.
Yeah.
The reason is because over the years, there's been so many interventions on Kaya. So many different interventions, different programming, different policies around Kaya, but the problem is still there. Like, it's still the same. And you would ask, why do the girls keep coming to Accra? Why are they still carrying, or why are they head pottering? Now, that was what drove me into starting Ilmiha. So we have other initiatives, but I'll just pick on the Kaya Insights. Mm-hmm. So because I started spending more time with them because of my research, right? And so I go to them, I spend morning, afternoon, evening, I'm always with them because I was trying to get like my interviews and all that. And I don't know, I just grew very fan of them and I became like the center of them. So on various markets, so Medina, Malata, and Makwala. But my research was focused on Makwala. But I don't even know how, but I started getting involved in all the various markets because when they have an issue of violence or sexual abuse or any police case, they call me. Because they just started getting my number and then they started giving their contact, like my contact to other people in the various markets. And because of I told you that I've been working with them for the past 5 years.
Right.
So I thought about it and I was like, okay, there's something missing. Because when I was doing the research, I read a lot of papers. People have written so much on Kaya, on different topics, different topics.
Though?
That's because I'm a Kaya myself. You would ask again. So I think we are all Kayais in different regards.
But
what was the meaning of Kaya? It's a Hausa word coined. Kaya is like a Hausa word. Like it's coined from Kaya as a load, like burden.
Right.
And ye it's like a Ga word, which is like a pronoun for she. So that's how come Kaya came to be.
A female who is carrying a burden. Then we are all Kaya.
Exactly. That's why I said I'm a Kaya myself.
But then in the context of what we are talking about, why did you decide to focus on Kaya girls who help people carry their loads in the markets?
So that's what I was still explaining. Because for me, I grew very attached to them. But I wanted to understand why interventions haven't been very sustainable. UNFP has done so much with Kaya. Paid Ghana has done so much with Kaya. Hope for Her has done so much with Kaya. Like so many organizations. I can mention about 10 organizations that I know.
And why do you think these efforts are not yielding the results?
Because of data gaps. And that is why we started Ilmiha. Because of data gaps. For instance, nobody can tell you the number of girls we have within this period. Nobody can tell you the profile of girls we have. If you look at the reason, so I will explain what we are doing in terms of the data. We are getting 100,000 data points to inform interventions. So basically, what we are trying to do is that at the end of the day, we want to tell you that if you are an NGO, say Thriving Women, and you want to do something with pay period or do something on menstrual hygiene, where do you start from? Who do you speak to?
So now let me ask you, if an NGO, Edith is here, if an NGO like hers wants to target, say, women in Latebiokoshi or in any suburb in Accra, do you have data on how many girls specifically are struggling with getting access to safe sanitary products that you can give to her to use?
Not girls, but I can give her in terms of KIA. That's
Okay.
that's what I was coming to.
So how many KIAs in Ghana currently are struggling?
We've not finished wrapping up the reports. By December, we'll be able to come out with the whole report. So we are still doing the research. We've done few activities. So we've done our observation. So the data points we are gathering is their names, how long you've been in Accra, where do you reside? Is it Medina Market? So we have a whole profile of girls from Medina Market. We have a profile of girls in Malata Market. We have a profile of girls in Makwala Market. And then we have a profile of girls in Kantamanto. And that is what people missed. The girls around all these areas, the girls and women, do not carry the same things and do not speak the same language, are not all from the northern part of Ghana. They are from various parts of Ghana.
Let me ask you this, because you are from the north as well. Was there a point in your growing up life that you were tempted to come to Accra to do KIA?
No, there was no point in my life that I was tempted to come to Accra to do
What
KIA.
are the prevailing circumstances in that region that forces girls to come here to do KIA?
One, so many social issues, forced marriage, economic disparity. Some of them come because, some of them actually, like I said, again, are in school, but they just come to get money and further their education. We actually have sponsored one girl, that was even before Ilmiha, to University of Ghana. She's almost done. But this is someone who was always in the market. So she comes, so I was trying to explain why we are having that insight. So the whole behavioral insight is to understand that there's some missing points people don't get when it comes to KIA. Because the girls are not a homogeneous group, but people keep treating them as a homogeneous group. There are some of the girls who are exiting from the market. There are some of the girls who just started the market. There are some of them who are born into KIA.
Why should we care about all these data?
Because of the interventions that we provide for them. Now, if I'm a girl in Makwala, Asana is a girl that I was working with. She is in Makwala. She had just finished junior high school, and she came to look for money so that when her results is out, she can go to senior high school. An NGO comes and is providing skills training for KIA. She will accept it because that is what the NGO is giving her. But the NGO hasn't understood that Asana is a different case. And there are so many Asanas. There are so many girls just like Asana who doesn't want a skill training but wants to go back to school. There's no profiling. And that is why we are doing Ilmiha.
How is it going so far?
It's been very insightful and exciting and frustrating sometimes. Yeah.
Frustrating?
Yeah. I mean, it comes with it. Because the girls are not organized, you have to organize them. There are challenges, especially that we are self-funding it. I've not gotten funding from anywhere, so sometimes it gets very frustrating. But also, just the exciting part is that getting other people, other NGOs who are also interested in supporting you to do a lot of things in their area. For instance, pay a period. We had an activity which was very exciting, and we are hoping that the next time we are having that activity, and that is why we need Ilmiha. That's why we need the insight and the data. The next time we're having a menstrual hygiene conversation with the girls, we know that these girls we met, we had the same conversation. Okay, the next time we are having a conversation, where do we pick up from? We are not going to just come and distribute sanitary pad or have the same conversation. We are picking up from where we stopped. Do you understand?
Right.
Yeah. And so that there's no multiple of, you are not duplicating your effort, or you are just repeating the same kind of conversation over and over. But at least you can trace that there's progress in all the conversations, there's progress in all the advocacy that we are doing.
And you share this progress with other organizations so that once organization A has come to take these girls to a certain point, another organization should not come to repeat the same efforts, just like you're saying. Do you share the data with them?
So basically, we are hoping that by the time we finish, like I said, by December, we'll be able to be done with our data and everything. We can give metrics of, okay, these girls in Medina have never had any NGO contacting them in A, B, and C. And these are the girls that have never come into contact with any NGO in terms of skills training. So by December, we'll be able to share that data.
Let me pick your thoughts on the period poverty conversation and the fact that there's been a lot of efforts, not this year, not last year. I mean, as far as I can remember, women have been pushing, NGOs have been pushing for the scrapping of the 20% tax for interventions that can help girls have a better period or a dignified period. Do you see us getting there to the point where there is solution instead of us keeping on talking about the problems over and over again?
I think there's press for progress, and we have to keep pushing. I see as a development worker, I see us actually getting there, but it will take a long time, right? I always say that the Beijing conference was like a year, like so many years ago before girls had the opportunity. And we don't know what it took our grandparents in that Beijing conference to push for girls to have a voice. But today, at least, there's progress, right? We are not obviously there. We've not checked all our boxes as women who want to really have seats on the table. But we are actually getting there. Now we see women in engineering. We see women in like roles that men were typically dominated. Now we see women in those roles. We are still pushing. The affirmative action bill was pushed like years ago, and they haven't stopped past the affirmative action bill. Yeah, so I mean, there's progress. We will keep pushing till we actually get there.
Edith, let me come back to you. So on the conversation of government scrapping these taxes off, I mean, other people have raised a question of who stands to lose or gain. So in terms of revenue mobilization, if government is taking these taxes off, what alternative do they have to sort of raise other sources of funding for the state?
Okay. So I'd like to say that you cannot put value on human life, and attempting to put an economic price on girls' safety and dignity when they are menstruating is wrong. For the government to find ways of raising money, they can get creative. We have tax experts in this country. We have economic whiz kids in this country. They can find more creative alternatives to mobilize resources that does not put a price and arbitrarily punish young girls who are menstruating. So I don't think there's anything, we shouldn't be talking about it in who is winning, who is losing. It's a necessary thing that has to be done. Girls must have safe, accessible, dignified periods. Nobody's losing if girls are equipped, they are empowered, and they have their access. The government can find more creative ways to mobilize resources, and it can find other ways to also check the money that's already coming in and make sure it's put to good use. So,
when you say economic whiskey, I was tempted to think towards a certain line, because one person who we know was very, very interested in economics and who is a politician in 2020, that's the Vice President, Dr. Bawumia, promised that when the government is voted into power, they'll make sure to scrap off the taxes. But we are still here, it's 2023.
I mean, we've seen a lot of people trying to remind him of his promise, and I'm once again appealing to the Vice President of Ghana to honor his promise to scrap the tax. Again, there's nothing to lose by making periods more affordable, more accessible, and more safe for your girls, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President too.
Why you say Mr. President?
I mean, he has a boss, so everyone involved should work towards achieving it. It should not be a political issue. It's a human rights issue.
For you, Miha, where do we start from when we want to achieve that dignity we are looking for our girls?
I think it's a collaborative effort, and it's a call on all of us, whether government, whether NGOs, whether civil service, whether media houses. We all have to put our voices in. You know, I think I will give an example to one of the issues that I was discussing with someone, and the person's like, you these women cry, you're making noise too much. And I'm like, because you don't understand. Nobody will speak for us unless we speak for ourselves, right? So we need to make that noise until we get what we want. So I'd say it's a collective effort, like everybody needs to be on board. Even at workplaces, like media houses, I should walk into the washroom and have sanitary pad in the washroom.
Really?
Yeah, these are little practice that can actually help us, because like we gave those examples of where you are at an environment, you are in an environment where you don't have access to sanitary pad, and if you're not economically strong or probably have money on you to buy sanitary pad, at least you know that if I walk into this washroom, I would find, even in hotels, we should be able to find sanitary pad everywhere.
Hotels fine, but organizations, I think they are paying their staff. So why should they take that burden as well in providing sanitary?
That's the collective effort we are talking about. What are they doing? So that is their contribution to cut that quota. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we all need to do something, right? So it won't take anything away from them if they have like one box of sanitary pad in the washroom. Because women, they won't leave their sanitary pad and come and use all the sanitary pad, but just in case of emergency. Yeah, and that's also to create more awareness. Yeah.
What are your cleaners? What are guests who come in?
Yeah.
My producers want me to ask you a question. That what about people who walk into the washroom and take the sanitary pads you have provided, take it away, put it in their pockets and take them away? Will they serve the purpose that you have put the sanitary pads there for?
No, I don't think when we are looking for solutions, we shouldn't be looking for problems before finding the solutions. Actually, yeah.
But you have to consider also.
Yeah,
I mean, the risk
that
exists, but are you going to take that one bad nut possibility at the expense of all the good that could happen?
This has been an interesting conversation. Is there any last word you have? First of all, I wanted to ask about your researches. Has there been any of them that has so far been able to influence policy direction whatsoever in the country?
Not in the country, but with little organizations, for instance. It is
so still in the country?
Yeah. I mean, not on the broader picture, not like on a national scale, right? But with organizations that I have worked closely with or friends that I know that are running organizations, it's something that I always put on the table to them that if you want to work in collaboration with the KIA, these are things that you should consider. So we are getting there. Like I said, by December we'll publish it. And maybe who knows?
What should we look forward to in the research that you're going to publish for us? Give us, I mean, we have you here.
Okay.
So give us
I mean, tips, right?
Yes,
okay. So very amazing findings that people would be very surprised to see that some KIA girls, some people have done KIA and like gotten monies from KIA to finish their university education. And if these girls were girls who got some opportunities, probably would have been in better places, right? Some very, 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 very insightful insights. I mean, let's hope.
Yes.
Let's wait. Yeah. Like very,
I want
very exciting insights.
I want a scoop. So for instance, is that suggesting that the state should pay attention to KIAs? And
yes,
because people also find their existence, especially in the city, as, I won't use a nuisance, but something that should not be encouraged.
Yeah, it's not something that should be encouraged, actually. But at the end of the day, that's what I'm saying. Our research should be able to inform what we can do. Is the government saying they want to provide hostel facility for KIA? It's going to call more girls. This is what everybody's saying. But who knows? Maybe
but that has not happened.
Yes, but who knows? Maybe it will not call more girls. Maybe it will change something, you know. So.
But do you even think that is going to happen, the promise of providing a hostel facility for them?
Well, I can't sit here and say anything, but...
From what you are seeing and looking at, does it look like this is going to happen anytime soon?
I heard there was a sword carton, and then they went there. So let's see. I don't know. I don't know if it's possible or not. It's the government, right? So anything is possible in Ghana. Tomorrow we wake up and then there's some building there.
It is your last words. Pay for a period.
Okay, so first of all, thank you for the opportunity. I want to say that, like Miha mentioned, it's a collaborative effort to fight period poverty from the schools, that means teachers, religious bodies, NGOs, CSOs, the government, and very influential private citizens. Lend your voice to the cause, help us provide free sanitary products to all these girls, also help us provide good washroom facilities so that they can properly manage their periods when they are menstruated. I also want to mention that this is not something this is not a fight that the NGO should only be spearheading. We need government support, and we need all the support we can have, especially with the corporate bodies. I am inviting you to adopt NGOs that are working in this regard, support with finances, product donations, and reach out to me if you want to adopt any of the schools that we have donated to ensure that they're able to have unlimited supply throughout the year to manage their periods with dignity and comfort.
Edith Hayford is co-founder of the Thriving Women Foundation. I also spoke with Samiha Yunus, who is the founder of Ilmiha Labs. It has been a great conversation here on Spotlight. Thank you so much for your company. But like I always say, this show is to impact society and cause change. So wherever you find yourself, try and do something, howbeit little, it will cause some change to other people. Thank you so much once again for your time. My name is Adwoa Tenkoramaa. I'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.